Danielle Lin here with Dr. Jean Bruno, and I am excited for what's going to happen for you today because every time he's here, if you watch our podcast or listen to the radio show, you walk away with something of value that will change your life. And also, the most important thing I think over the years, we've been on the air with the radio show for 40 years. It's always been about the science of life, the art of living, but it's also the combination of just being. And how do you be? How do you wake up every day and feel better that you're on track instead of thinking, I hear people say, well, how old are you? People ask me that all the time. How old are you? And I'm like, I don't believe in
They
aging.
ask you that?
Yes, they
How
ask me that.
rude.
Right? And I believe in saging because it's such a ridiculous question. How old are you? So that is a concern, though. And today we're going to talk about aging. We're going to talk about the process of, do you have to age really? And if you do, how do you age? And I wanted you to come back. I know we recently did another program together. It was so good about
What's one?
tomato. And if you don't know Jean Bruno, he is illustrious and epic writer. He is the chief scientific officer at Nutraland USA. And the Vitamin Professor is his podcast that it's like going to college. It's literally like going to college. So if you want to have a trail where you can trust and you can guide yourself, Dr. Bruno is the one. So I'm happy that you're here. Wishing you holidays of the year, right? No date, no beginning, no end, but holidays of the year. And just let's talk about, living well, aging instead of, like just living well, not saying I'm getting older all the time. And what is the problem today that we are facing in society that people are scared that they're going to age? So tell me your perspective on this whole category.
So, aging is one of those things like death and taxes. There's a certain amount of inevitability with aging. You can't stop the fact that you age, but you can impact how you age, and you can impact how your body responds. You can have a better quality of life. There was actually an interesting survey done between AARP and National Geographic, and they asked people if you could just take a pill and you could have an additional 10 years of life, would you do it? 75% of them said, well, yeah, yeah. Then they changed it and said, if you could take a pill and it would improve your health and quality of life for as long as you're living. Now, 85% said they would do it. People want to live a healthy life, not just a long life. And there's a number of things that we can do. People know some of them: how you eat, your exercise. Do you have any kind of a practice that helps you remain calm? And what kind of supplements can you use to impact the way your body ages, helping to reduce it? So there are a number of things that is within our control. This is something that I've been studying for quite a long time, and I'm actually in the process of writing a book I'm calling Biohacking Longevity, talking about some of the same information.
It's interesting because where the last time we were together, we know that sleep can cause cognitive dysfunction. It can help you, it can make you gain weight, creates fear. With the aging, I've actually asked people if you could, I mean, it's likely now in our time, you could live to 100. You could live to 150. We're getting to that realm.
Absolutely. Earlier this week, my mom turned 53, and she's in good health. Excuse me, 93. Did I say 53?
I was going to say
93.
53. I thought, well, that's
She
okay.
told everybody I was supposed to say she turned 29, but
Yeah,
since
I was
I'm
thinking you were
65,
saying
not sure how
100
that works.
I've asked people about this and I'm like, wow, imagine you can live to 150. People are like, absolutely not. I have no interest. And I do think that when your life is interesting and you're interested in life, that living becomes a whole different spectrum. And health, it's a funny field. You know that. We've been doing this for decades. And there's a lot of people that still think that the natural products industry is not for real. There's no science. It's not approved. So speak to the changes from your background is prolific in nutraceutical research and science. I mean, you literally had a college and you taught people from the very beginning, including doctors. From a nutraceutical point of view, you first gave me a word when we were, again, in a meeting. You said this word autophagy, which I didn't even, I had a hard time saying it the first time, but I didn't know what it was. Explain to me the process of aging and what that key factor is.
Yeah. So aging, there's like 12 pathways of aging that are well established in the scientific literature. One of those, a key one, has to do with autophagy. Autophagy is simply your cell's process of breaking down and recycling old damaged cell parts for cellular renewal. Like so many things, as we age, our autophagy isn't as good as it was. So if we can keep our autophagy working well, it's like if you have an engine in your car, if it's starting to get old and break down and you can rebuild it, it works better, it keeps going, and if you can do the same thing with your cells through good autophagy, that makes all the difference in the world. So autophagy is a vital part of the process. And at one point, we didn't think there's really anything we could do about it. Now we know there are some very important things you can do to help stimulate autophagy.
You did a fantastic presentation about this subject. I think it was at Anaheim, Las Vegas, supply side. Yeah, supply side global. It was so good. And the room, you didn't hear like a pin drop. So explain how do you address it from a nutraceutical point of view? The word spermidine, if that's, I don't know how if that's the right word, but I heard that in the room. Explain all that in a short version of what you talked about that day.
Sure. So spermidine, a very unfortunate name for a very impactful substance, belongs to a group of compounds known as polyamines. They're found throughout different types of foods and found throughout our body. And one of the things that spermidine does, kind of its big claim to fame, is the role that it plays in stimulating autophagy. So when you have sufficient spermidine present, it's able to stimulate that process of autophagy, getting it going. There had been, my goodness, studies, in vitro studies, animal studies, population studies, looking at the role that it played. In one study, people who had a higher intake of spermidine in their diet, they were able to see some really good health and good aging over like a 20-year period. It was very impressive. And the authors of the study indicated that it was likely the autophagy effect that was going on there. And by the way, a lot of people have heard about the importance of NAD for healthy aging. Turns out there's a NAD autophagy axis. They work together. So you can do all this stuff to help you with NAD, but if you don't have good autophagy, it's not going to work. And so that's another area where something like spermidine can come into play and make a big difference. Now, it should be noted, however, that not all spermidines are created equal. So that's important to realize.
Well, you and I I have committed my life to raw materials. I love them. It rules the world. I could go into a whole historical discussion about that. But for the body, when we started decades ago on radio, my first beginning was find the raw materials, make sure they were clinically studied, find them that they're branded. So when you spin the bottle around, you can see like the different things you mentioned, Somato. In this case, it's Miricell, right?
Miricell, yeah.
Yeah, and Miricell. And I think it's really important, folks. If you listen to my show, this is what besides the luminaries that are on, like the Jack Canfields and the Deepak Chopras and the Wayne Dyers and everybody that's been on my show, the primary, cause and effect are the raw material suppliers that we've worked with that have brought the change of science, efficacy, sustainability to the bottom line. What kind of studies does Miricell have? And in the few minutes we have together, how effective is it? You mentioned the foods you'd get spermidine, but let's
Yes.
talk about the studies too, and
Sure.
not that it's an ingredient, but this ingredient.
One of the things that's important to note, I mentioned that not all spermidines are created equal. And what I mean by that is there's three major sources of spermidine in the marketplace. One is Miricell, which is derived from a rice germ extract. That's from the rice milling industry, where they take whole grain rice and they strip out the bran, they strip out the germ, and keep the white rice, and then they take that germ and that bran and they toss it into animal feed or throw it away. We rescue the germ, we upcycle it, and we make an extract out of it so that you have an excellent source of spermidine. There's a couple of other polyamines that are major and that work together with spermidine, but you don't have that in the synthetic variety, which is popular. You do have it with ours. And then there's another source out there that's a wheat germ source instead of rice germ, but it's measures of lesserness with regard to its potency. So you have to use a whole lot more of the material to get what you need. And of course, it's wheat. If you got gluten problems, there's that. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure you're using a good source. And not only is it a good source, you got to make sure it has the research. So we did a nice pilot study on Miricell. By the way, the Miricell, that name came from a Chinese word for rice. So
Hmm.
that's
Oh,
why.
cool.
But what happened is we did this study and we said, if you look at all the research that's been done on spermidine, animal in vitro population research, there was not one published human clinical trial that said if you take X amount of spermidine, it will increase measures of autophagy. You can measure biomarkers of autophagy increase. So we said, let's do that study. And we did. And we found that two major markers, one called Beclin-1, one called ULK1, you had measurable increases in those, which is a direct correlation with increases in autophagy. So we could see for the first time that 3.3 milligrams of spermidine from Miricell was having this effect. And at the same time, we found substantial differences in like reductions in C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory substance, VLDL cholesterol. We found reductions in triglycerides and a nice increase in BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor for cognitive wellness. Speaking of which, we did another study. This one was a larger randomized placebo-controlled study, which I'm still writing up the manuscript for. And that one, we showed that in a cohort of people that had mild cognitive dysfunction, there was a 98% improvement in cognitive function over placebo in people who used 3.3 milligrams of spermidine from our Miricell rice extract. And in that same study, just because we could, we said, let's look at these surveys that are done on something called the Likert scale, which is a way of measuring it, and see what effects it's having on hair and having on nails. And we found improvements in hair growth, reductions in hair shedding, improvements in hair thickness, improvements in nail growth and strength. So we're finding some amazing results. And when you say, wow, these are diverse effects, all these things you're mentioning, how does it do that? Well, guess what? When you improve autophagy, you improve a whole lot of stuff. Things start working better. And so to us, that was a big deal. And it was so effective that we're now in the process of doing a much larger randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial on Miricell, looking at some of these same markers of effectiveness that we found in the smaller pilot study.
Yeah. So we have a minute. Give us a one line on the work and the commitment from Nutraland USA and where someone would reach for B2B if you want to develop a product. If there's a consumer, where do they find it? Give us a quickie on that.
So the best thing to do if you want to learn more about it is go to NutralandUSA.com. You're going to find all kinds of great information there. And there's a phone number there you can call as well. And if you have questions for me, you can do gene.bruno@NutralandUSA.com. Nutraland is all about the research. We put our money where our mouth is. We spend money and do the human clinical trials. We're not doing animal testing. We're doing human trials. Our motto is good for you, good for the earth. We do our best to do upcycled materials. All of our materials are vegan friendly. We want to provide the best of the best. And we feel that we've done a very good job on that with our materials. Miricell, I think, it's second to none with regard to being, in my opinion, the best spermidine material out there.
That's exciting and very exciting. And tell us where to find the Vitamin Professor.
Yeah, you can just go to the Vitamin Retailer website and it's housed there. You can click on any of the episodes, or you can go to any of the podcast platforms. Name one, it's on there, and you can find it there as well.
All right, my friend, I appreciate you so much for being with us, Dr. Jean Bruno. And thanks for tuning in. You can find more at DanielleLin.com, my last name, Lin. And we look forward to the next great conversation. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for being with us. Bye, Jean.